Yes, thank you very much, um, Mr. Dennis. And this is a great pleasure, Mr. Michael Holden, for me personally and for thousands of people out there, as per usual. And I must say this before we actually start the questions and getting to know you a little bit better, because when we have in our presence a great man, and we don't use that word very loosely at all, it's very appropriate in speaking about you, sir. And you're a legendary cricketer, one of the finest fast bowlers to ever grace the game, and quite rightly so, counted among the all-time greats. Um, Beyond the field of play, though, you're also a respected commentator and admired for your insight as much as for your integrity. We all know the numbers. How many wickets you took, how many test matches you played, your highest score, best bowling performances, the match winning spells, etc. But tonight, especially in the beginning, we would like to go about knowing a little bit about the foundation, the early influences, the discipline, and at times little setbacks that forged you into the person that you became, the player that you became. And I think it is very important, especially in this day and age, where many of our youngsters don't understand that when you see someone reaching lofty heights, when the world is watching, is what you do before anybody is really watching you that counts and strengthens you to move forward. So, with that said, I must say my own personal greetings and welcome to Mr. Michael Anthony Holden. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, dear.
So, Michael, you went to Kingston College, and it seems as if you started here in 1964.
That's correct.
And that would mean you entered high school at a very early age.
Well, I entered at age 10.
And that's very early.
So I understand. I think, but just a year earlier, I think. I think most people enter at age 11. And
11
actually,
and
the
12.
headmistress at my prep school wanted me to stay another year to take the scholarship again, because
Yes.
she wanted her this the prep school to get some sort of recognition from where this youngster was coming from. It was Peter King's Prep on Brentford Road, and not many people knew about Peter King's Prep.
Okay. And yes, so it's unusual because I grew up in Jamaica and I know some boys, even when they are in third and fourth form, they could still play under 13 football. And you seemed like you would have fallen in that category.
Yeah, I actually played Coles cricket at KC early days. Well, junior Coles first of all, and then Coles cricket. And actually, I competed in class four when it come to athletics, and you don't really have class four anymore. But you know,
Right.
that's the age group I was in when I got there.
Okay. So I'm going to take a guess. Maybe I'm cheating a little bit, but usually when youngsters enter so early, there's some education or educator behind them.
Well, that was
Is
my
that the
mother.
case with you?
That was my mother. My mother taught for many, many years. I think she perhaps taught for 40 and 50 years, and she was also a headmistress. She taught at Alpha Academy. She taught at KC, and she became headmistress at St. George's Girls' School down on Duke Street. So that she
Okay.
was pretty much the steering force behind me. You know, she used to keep on telling me it's so important to get an education. And when I was thinking about sports and playing a lot of sports, not that I was thinking of making it a profession, but when I was playing a lot of sports, she kept on hammering me with that. You have to get an education.
I see. So you mentioned junior Coles and Coles cricket, but you also was on the KC winning Sunlight Cup team in I
Yes.
think it was 1970.
Yeah, 1970, KC won a Sunlight, but I think we won 70-71 or 70-72, something like that. But that's the first time I played for KC, 1970, when we won the Sunlight Cup. I wasn't actually playing at that age group at KC. I played Colts and Junior Colts, and then I didn't really play a lot of cricket after that at KC. I was at Melbourne Cricket Club, playing cricket at Melbourne Cricket Club when the sports master, Mr. Trevor Parchment, who was at KC at the time, came to me and said, I hear that you're playing cricket at Melbourne. I said, yes, sir. He said, well, why don't you play at KC? I've got to turn out for the Sunlight Cup team. So I turned out, I went to practice, and eventually I got into the final 11. But I'm not too sure that the captain really welcomed my presence because this was this youngster coming along. He didn't practice the entire season with us. And then Mr. Parchment is telling him that I should be in the team. So I didn't get the ball to bowl until I think about third or fourth change.
Oh, okay.
But I played with some good guys at the time. You know, there was Ray Ford, who was a left arm seamer at KC at the time. There was um, Norm, Norman, what's Norman? Norman Henry, fast. When I talk about fast schoolboy, real fast.
Mhm.
Zeph Henry was actually the captain at the time. Zodiac Henry was his correct name. They call him Zeph Henry. And we had some good cricketers. We had Stuart Stevenson, who eventually, well, he was from St. Lucia originally and came to Jamaica to study. He came to KC, he played for KC. We had another off spinner who unfortunately got hurt. He went to champs and somebody, kids playing around, threw a stick in the crowd and hit him in his eye, lost his eye, and of course that affected his cricket. But he would have played for Jamaica and possibly West Indies, but not for that. Danny Clear was his name. Donald Clear, we call him Danny Clear. He was an absolutely brilliant cricketer. But such is life, those things happen when you're a youngster.
So, Michael, you played for two great dynasties, the West Indies cricket dynasty, of course, and the Kingston College dynasty in track and field, because you're a member of their boys champs team. I see you photographing the team, and they have
I
you as
made
a
up numbers, Dale.
yes,
I
sir.
made up numbers.
Well, you look good.
I wasn't that good enough to really contribute a great deal to the track team. When I went to school, they had some fantastic athletes there, and I ran sports day, got medals at sports day, but actually representing Kingston College at championships, I had to do it in the field events. I represented them at high jump, and I
Yeah.
possibly could have represented them at hurdles as well, but I was so weak. Every time I was running, by the time I got to hurdle number 6 or 7, I was tired and I would usually hit the eighth hurdle and fall over or something. But we had some fantastic athletes. I was just happy to be a member of the squad.
Well, Michael, what a member of the squad you were, because I distinctly remember, I think it was 1968, when they had you paired with a youngster from Cornwall College named Percy Buckner, and that you two were two of the better rated high jumpers at the time. I guess that was rumor too, huh?
Not quite, not quite. I was okay at high jump. As a matter of fact, I have a record at KC that still stands. But as I mentioned, they no longer really have a class 4 at KC. I have a class 4 high jump record. I think it's 4 foot 11 and 3/4. And
Oh,
at that age to jump that high, that was considered pretty good. So I represented KC at champs in high jump, but not on the track.
right. So you mentioned Melbourne, and it's amazing to me that as a youngster, you even toured with the Melbourne club. And there's a link with your family and Melbourne, well known. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, my father has been a Melbourne, or had been a Melbourne, because he's no longer with us. Had been a member of Melbourne for a very, very long time. He started off at Railway, and then of course he was also a member of YMCA. And then from I knew anything about him and sport, I associated him with Melbourne because I played football and a little bit of cricket, but more football and cricket. And when Melbourne was at where the junior KC is now, at Melbourne Park as it's called. That is where Melbourne was when I was a little boy. That's where I know Melbourne to be. And he was a member there. He eventually became president of the club many, many, many years later on. And the story goes there that when I was born, because those days you were born in the master bedroom with a midwife,
Mhm.
hospital and doctor and nurse and that sort of thing. It was a midwife who visited the home, and I was born at home at 29 Dunramming Avenue. And the story goes that when I was born, and the midwife, he was standing at the door apparently, and the midwife said, "It's a boy." And he didn't even wait to look at me. He went straight down to Melbourne and registered me at Melbourne. That's how the story goes. I don't know. Obviously, I wouldn't know. So I've been a
Well,
member of Melbourne now for 72 years.
great, great. And how did playing for Melbourne from such a young age, teach you? What did it teach you about competitive cricket? Because you played with big men.
Yeah, but that helped me a lot. That helped my development a lot. Not just playing with big men, but also being associated with certain people that were at Melbourne. Two of the cricketers at Melbourne who helped me a lot were actually spinners, Dale. Arthur Barrett, who bowled leg spin, he actually played for the West Indies, went to tour, he toured India. I think he might have played a few test matches in the Caribbean as well. And the other one was Bruce Wellington, a left-arm spinner.
Defender.
Yes, and there were two excellent spinners. They would win games left, right, and center for Melbourne. But they took me under their wing as a little boy because what Melbourne did, as you mentioned, touring, but they also, as we call it, toured in Jamaica, going into the rural areas and playing against backside teams on Sundays and that sort of thing. Because we didn't have a senior cup on Sundays those days when I was a little boy. So we'd go into the rural areas, play against Alcan and all the backside teams. Kaiser everywhere. And of course, it was an official game, so I was allowed to play, although I was a kid. And these guys would take me under their wing from early days and help me along. Another one was George Sterling. And later on in life, now when I became big enough and capable enough to actually play proper cricket for Melbourne, Rod Williams was the captain, and he helped me a lot. So it was also important the people that I had around me, not just the fact that I was playing cricket.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing that. And by the way, KC won the Spalding Cup against Virtek that year that you won the Sunlight Cup. I don't know if you remember that.
Yes, 1970. And I think the next year we lost it to Virtek, either 71 or 72 again, when they had Diego Gordon and Dove Master, and they had a very, very good team. But we won both competitions in 1970.
70, yes. So I just want people to know the championship pedigree that they are coming from. Both in
Well, I played in good teams there. That's the thing. I had some great people around me, similar with the West Indies. When you look at that West Indies team, and you look at the names that were in that West Indies team, we had a great team.
Right. So, Michael, we're going to jump a little bit and look at your days as a youth cricketer playing for Jamaica. And you were there's a particular bowling attack that I liked. The one that had Seymour Newman, Jeffrey McLeod, and
Yes.
yourself at the three-prong pace attack. And I think you had Hilton Gordon as the left-arm spinner.
Pancho, yes.
Yes.
We had another fast bowler from Cornwall, that didn't quite make the final 11. A left-arm seamer by name of Jones. He was okay as well. Yeah, he was okay. He was okay. Don't forget him.
Well, thank you for recognizing him, sir, because I think Cornwall at the time had the best opening attack, pace bowling attack.
They did, definitely, with those two guys.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, Jeff McLeod. Well, but McLeod wasn't just a cricketer. He was a bit more than a cricketer, as we know. Or you and I might know. Everybody might not know.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant sportsman.
Yes.
And great quarter miler.
Yes.
Just similar to Seymour Newman. And
Yes.
he cricket for a track scholarship. And
well, both of them did.
Yes. So from that championship team, that youth team, anybody that stood out to you that maybe you had expected them, you admired their capabilities as cricketers?
Let me try and remember now exactly who was in that youth team. Because the first time we went overseas, we went to Barbados, I think in 1972. That's the team that had Seymour Newman, who was pretty much the leading fast bowler at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Who else was in that team? I'm trying to think of the batsmen. I can't. Was Jeffrey Mordecai in that team? I don't remember.
Was captain.
Yes, Mordecai. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then of course he was also a footballer, and he ditched both to become a top lawyer.
Yes.
You see, those days, as we know, Dale, there wasn't a great deal in sports. Yeah, and it was difficult for anyone to think of being a sports person professionally. So a lot of those top cricketers and footballers, some of them got scholarships to go overseas, track scholarships or football scholarships, and they played the sport a bit longer. But the cricketers, there wasn't any scholarship for cricketers to go anywhere to further their studies, for cricket to help them to further their studies at any rate. So a lot of the cricketers never really persisted with the game because they had other things that they had to focus on.
Right. So after your school, you did everything from a young age, it seems. And when you got selected to play, you didn't actually play, you were a 12th man in that game against the Windward Island, in the Combined Islands, I believe. And
Yes.
there was someone else that was your opposing 12th man. Could
Yes.
you tell us about that individual?
Anderson Montgomery Everton Roberts. He was the 12th man for the Combined Islands, and I was 12th man for Jamaica. And that is where the friendship started. Of course, it's going long before we had George Headley stand, and the teams changed in the Kingston dressing room. And there were some green benches out the front where the leftover cricketers, you have a squad that would come to each island, and those who weren't in the 11 would just sit on that bench. And I was on the Jamaica bench, as you might call it, and Andy and a couple of other Combined Islands guys were on their bench. It just so happens that Andy went out with the water cart, as I did. That is how we got to first interact. And then we just started to talk to each other more and more during the play. And of course, we became very, very good friends. The following year, when we played the Combined Islands again, I was in the Jamaica dressing room, and there was a common door between the front dressing room, which is where the visitors stayed, and the back dressing room, Kingston Cricket Club we're talking about now, where the Jamaica team stayed. And I just saw that door burst open, and this guy comes charging towards me in my dressing room. And I look up, it's Andy. Because you had to remember, I tell you, the friendship just grew from there. And we are still friends up to today.
That's a beautiful story. And do you remember your first class wicket? Do you remember who it was?
You're pushing my memory now. First class wicket.
Was
Um,
against Barbados.
oh, it's Barbados? I don't
Yes,
even remember. I know I played against Trinidad and Barbados in Jamaica.
yes.
I can't remember my first class wicket.
That's okay.
Sorry.
It was Nolan Clark.
Oh, okay. I
Nolan
don't
Clark.
remember that. I remember Nolan Clark for sure, because Nolan Clark was one of those guys that was quite friendly. He talked a lot, and he
Yes.
wasn't worried about making friends with the opposition. So I remember him very well.
So, Michael, if I had to take a bet and somebody said, what was the mode of dismissal? I would tell you clean bowl, because
Okay,
you have one of the highest ratios of clean bowl in Test cricket. You have
okay,
around 32, 33% of your victims have been clean bowled.
okay. I wasn't even aware of that. And so, what is normal if 33 is high?
33 is high. Normal is the basic average is 20.
Oh, okay.
So
Less
you're
than 20
well above
nowadays.
the average. So here's a beautiful thing now, Sir Michael. You played 12 games before you got called up for West Indies. But in those 12 games, sir, you took how many wickets? You took 16 first class wickets. And of those 16s, Michael, 13 of them were clean bowled.
You're giving me some news here. These things that I'm not aware of. I wasn't aware of before you said it.
And two of them were out LBW.
Okay,
That means you only
okay.
had one card. So was it your intention just to attack the stumps that contributed to this? You said you didn't really know, but was that how you thought about bowling, your approach?
Yeah, well, that is basically what you try to do as a youngster. Because you remember what you're talking about now, me playing for Jamaica or being in the Jamaica squad from I was at school. And
Yes,
my coach at KC always told me, hit the stumps. Because at that level, you can't depend on people taking catches in the slips and that sort of thing. So my focus was always to try and hit the stumps. As a matter of fact, my action was more taking the ball away from the right hander than bringing it in. But again, talking about these guys who help you, Arthur Barrett is the one who taught me how to bowl the ball coming back into the right hander. And of course, if you're getting the ball to come back in, you have a better chance of hitting the stumps or getting them out LBW. So later on in life, when you know you have some excellent step fielders and you know your catchers are going to do an excellent job, then you can concentrate a lot more on off stump and outside the off stump. But early in life, you have to think about the stumps.
yes. Now, Michael, we're skipping around a little bit, but I have
No
to
problem.
focus on this. 1973, Australia came out to play West Indies. And in the game against Australia, you played in that game, and IR Redpath, Ian Redpath.
That one I remember.
Yes, you clean bowled him twice. For a man so young at that time to clean bowl a well-established test player twice, how did that make you feel?
Dale, to be honest, I didn't really feel that great because if you check the statistics, I didn't get a lot of wickets. Yeah, you get Ian Redpath out twice and, 19 years old and you get a test batsman out and get him out bowled twice. Yeah, you have achieved something. But I was looking to get, a few more wickets in each innings and I wasn't able to do that. But even so, Clive Lloyd saw me and thought, oh, this youngster has a bit of potential. And then they selected me for the President's 11. And I got Redpath out again in the President's 11. So
Well, Michael, I can tell you this. I saw all three dismissals, and I'll never forget them. I was at Jarrett Park, sitting towards the northern end, and you were bowling from that end, and I couldn't see what exactly happened except the stumps were knocked back. And that was in the second inning of the game.
yes, I didn't get him in the first innings.
Right. So, but somebody saw something in you that really attracted them and thought that you would have done quite well, I do believe.
Yeah, well, when they pick you when you're still at school, you have an idea that somebody thinks that you might be all right.
Yes, yes. So you mentioned Clive Lloyd, and I think it was around 75 at Border, nonetheless. Border of all places. You dismissed Fredericks very early, and Kalicharan came in one down, and you cleaned him up. You clean bowled him right away. I think he only faced two deliveries.
I don't
And
remember
this
how
was
many deliveries, but I know I got both of them quite quickly.
quite early. Kalicharan was out for a duck, and
Okay.
Fredericks made single figures. But I think that spell cast a spell on Clive Lloyd at the time because he was raving about you. And then when you went to, was it Bermuda when you played for the World 11 in a 60 over game?
Yeah, I
And
went to field.
yes,
I was
okay.
yeah, I wasn't a member. I don't think it was a 60 over game. I think it was a double wicket competition deal.
That was at that time. But Lloyd saw you. And when he was interviewed, I remember in the Gleaner, he said, young Mike has improved beyond my wildest dreams. And of course, later on, you were picked for Australia, the
Yeah.
tour of Australia, later that year. And being picked at that time, for everybody, I guess it was unexpected. So, how unexpected was it for you?
It wasn't totally unexpected, to be honest, because J.K. Holt Jr., who was one of the West Indies selectors at the time, was a very good friend of my father. And when they went to select the squad, I think they selected the squad for the World Cup. They remember they had a 75 World Cup as well in
Mhm.
England. They selected the West Indies squad. I think they were in Barbados, and they selected the squad down there. And J.K. Holt came back to Jamaica and in conversation with my father, said to him, your son's name came up in for World Cup, the World Cup squad. And my father was a little bit taken aback because he certainly didn't expect that. And J.K. Holt went on to say, but we decided that we would not take him as a youngster to the World Cup. We would wait and take him on a West Indies tour, a full tour. And of course, eventually that leaked out to me that my name was mentioned. So when I was actually selected for the Australia tour, it wasn't a total surprise. But to be honest, it wasn't something that I was looking forward to either. And when my name was called, I wasn't the happiest man in the world. And I'll tell you why I did. People laugh at me when I say this. But again, I was a kid. Yeah, when you get to 20, people say, oh, you're a grown man. Yeah, but maybe. But still, I was looking forward to Christmas at home in Jamaica. And being selected to go to Australia, I wasn't looking forward to that.
Yeah.
I was going to miss Christmas.
Definitely, I can imagine. So now, Michael, you're on the tour to Australia, and you play your very first match, and I think it was a first class match, was against South Australia, and you took two wickets.
Your memory better than mine, dear.
Okay, but Sir Michael, tell me, how do you think you dismiss the mode of dismissals for those two victims that you got in that game?
No idea.
Clean bowled. You bowled both of them.
I wouldn't remember those things, but to be honest.
Yeah. It's just to emphasize how, the art of clean bowling, people that seem to have been Michael Holden's specialty at that time. But yes, your first two wickets there were also clean bowled.
Okay.
Yes, and of course, the tour to Australia was, we all know what happened there. And I remember everybody speaking so highly of you, really speaking very highly of you. And they were very impressed when you made a 60 against one of those in the game leading up to the first test. So they were saying you could bat at, well, Boyce was still playing, so that they were saying that the tail would have been strengthened with your batting ability.
Well, that half century that I made, I think it was in New South Wales
Hmm.
against their not club, their state team. That was just before the first test match. I think that is what pushed Clive Lloyd and the senior management to push me up as night watchman, which could have gotten me killed. Because Lillian Thompson and Max Walker and Gary Gilmore and those guys, they were not the slowest. And I
Yes,
batted that night watchman in my first test match.
yes. So, Mike, that experience in that series, what would you say was the two of the biggest takeaways for you as a person and as a cricketer from that series in Australia?
Well, that series in Australia made me realize that Test cricket wasn't the glamorous thing that I thought it was. As a young man listening to cricket on the radio, and you hear the commentators and the descriptions that they make, I thought it was, this glamorous game that gentlemen played, and when somebody's out, they're out, and that was not the case. At least certainly not in Australia on my first tour. So that woke me up, made me understand that Test cricket was a tough thing and not something that you take lightly. And secondly, it made me understand what a team was supposed to be about. That was a sad tour as far as the West Indies team framework was concerned. It fell apart. After the third test match, or was it the fourth test match? I think after the fourth test match. Those days, of course, you wrote letters. It was telegrams and letters days. And I remember writing a letter to my dad. I think we were 3-1 down at the time. So it must have been the fourth test match. I wrote a letter to my dad and I said, Dad, I can tell you from now, don't be surprised if we lose this series 5-1 because the team had disintegrated. After that, well, everyone knows the story. It was rebuilt and not just built as far as cricket is concerned, but built as far as team and spirit was concerned. And we became what we were. But that 75, 76 tour, I could write a book about that tour and tell you exactly what not to make happen on tour. Because a lot of bad things went on. Team meetings got disrupted and, you know, ended prematurely because of people quarreling, all sorts of things deal. But Lloyd was a young captain, eventually grew in the position and became a great captain.
Yes, yes. So we go to the series against India now, and Andy was tired, and they rested him. So
He had an ankle problem as well.
oh, okay. So they rested him, and you kind of took over in many ways as the leader of the attack. And we all know what happened in that test match at Sabina, with against India, they declaring twice, etc., etc. But something that is lost, I believe, is that India batted first, and they declared 300 and something for six declared, and West Indies was in a spot of trouble when you joined the wicketkeeper Derek Murray,
Derek Murray.
and you were involved in a century stand with him, 107, sir, and of
Okay.
that you made 55.
Yeah, I
And
remember getting a half century.
you took West Indies. Now, when you joined Murray, is there anything in particular he said to you? Because he had lost the match before, the test
Yep.
match at Queen's Park before. No, you can't afford to lose. We're 200 and something for six. Mikey's coming in at number 8. If you can remember, what did Derek Murray say to you to
He
calm the
didn't
nerves?
he, he didn't actually say a lot to me, Adele. I can tell you what I said to Derek because When I went out there, I went to Derek and I said to Derek, Derek, you mean we're not going to win this test match? Because I was in despair. And Derek just looked at me and said, boy, so it go, but we still have to fight. And well, we know what took place. We put on a fantastic partnership, got a lead, and well, we won't go into the bowling. That was the sad part of the game.
Right. Yes, but I know that was one of your batting highlights in Test cricket, I believe. Big
Yeah,
contribution. Yeah.
definitely. I enjoyed that innings, and it contributed to us helping us to win that test match. So it meant a lot to me.
And then we go over to England, where I think was perhaps your shininess moment in that Test series against England.
Only
And
by numbers going on here.
I'm
Only
sorry.
by only by numbers. Because
Okay.
I at 22 years old, nobody could tell me that I knew everything about fast bowling. Got a lot of wickets, and in particular in one test match. But that was just the numbers. And I could never ever say at 22, I had mastered the art of fast bowling. I don't think I got anywhere near the top as far as skill as a fast bowler is concerned until I was perhaps 26, 27 years old.
Okay. Okay. And after that, strangely, I think it was at Kennington Oval the fifth test was played, and you never played Test cricket again for almost 3 years
Yeah,
because
well, different reasons for that, different circumstances made that. For one, I went to university after I went back from England because Michael Manley, who everybody would know is a big cricket fan, he gave me a scholarship to go to University of the West Indies to do computer science. Sorry. I got back to the Jamaica, I think it was August, late August or perhaps early September of 76. And he offered me the scholarship. And as I told you earlier on, my mother was adamant, you have got to be qualified with something. You got to get a piece of paper behind your name, as she would say. So I
Mhm.
accepted the scholarship. There wasn't any money in cricket. I didn't intend to become a professional cricketer playing county cricket. So I accepted the scholarship. And because of that, I was at university. When Pakistan toured the Caribbean, 77, January, February, somewhere around there, I was at university. So I wasn't involved in that series. And then, of course, Kerry Packer came along and we played 2 years of Kerry Packer after that. That's why I was out of Test cricket for 3 years.
Yes, and mentioning Kerry Packer, that set up World Series cricket. What were the biggest takeaways from the World Series cricket for you?
Well, that helped to mold that team that I was telling you about. World Series cricket helped us to become a proper team, not just a group of very good cricketers. When World Series cricket started, I was at university, as I said, wasn't playing with the West Indies, but then Lloyd called me from Trinidad on the house phone, of course. Father told me that he was on the line and he told me what was going on about World Series cricket. Now, as I said, I didn't see myself or seeing myself having a future in cricket. I was at university looking to do computer science, to now get an office job when I'm finished or whatever. And when World Series cricket came along and the amount of money that they were offering and under what circumstances they were offering these sums, I had to go. And it helped me as a young man with my maturity to be involved in World Series cricket, that stage of my life, and to be thinking about the future and seeing the West Indies team building and getting professional in the true sense of the word. Not in the sense that you're getting paid, because not because you're getting paid, you're a professional. In the true sense of being a professional. And that helped the entire squad in that regard and focused our minds and also got us to the level of fitness where more times than not, it was the same 11 taking the field each test match because we were that fit. Nobody really got injured. The odd injury has to come along. But
True.
Dennis Waite, who was seconded to the West Indies team during World Series cricket, got us extremely fit and were able to maintain that fitness and keep the same squad of guys, same set of guys on the field, and we became a great team.
Yes, yes. So the years afterwards, the first game you played was against Australia in '79 when you came back into the team when everybody
79,
else
80,
came
we
back.
went on the tour to Australia.
Yes, yes. And again, for the rest of the time, West Indies just had now evolved into this powerful team. And at the helm, which I think sometimes he doesn't get enough credit because people don't understand that Clive Lloyd, there was a molding process that had to take place. And they just saw great cricketers, but not realizing who molded them. How were they molded? Tell us
Yeah,
a little bit about Clive as captain.
yeah. A lot of people just brush over Clive Lloyd being the captain of that team. But as you said, Dale, it's so important that you have a leader that you respect and a leader who will respect you, so that you build a proper team. If you
Mhm,
go through the history of West Indies cricket, I beg your pardon, we have always had a lot of big names and great cricketers. But we have had teams in the past, yes, before Clive Lloyd, but we haven't always had great teams. And Clive Lloyd, I think, was one of the people that really helped to mold that set of cricketers into being a proper team. Clive Lloyd, this is my experience. People might differ or have different opinions, but Clive Lloyd, in my eyes, didn't care where the cricketers came from. Clive Lloyd wanted the best people in the Caribbean to represent the Caribbean and to win for the Caribbean. He wasn't always looking out for his fellow Guyanese. And also, what he told every manager that I went on tour with, after a while, he didn't have to say it. You don't pair people from the same islands as roommates. We're going back many years now. And these the guys wouldn't even know about roommates now. Everybody get their own single room now and stay in five-star hotels. But in our time, everybody had a roommate. The only people that did not have a roommate was the captain and the vice captain. You'd have 16 on tour, captain, vice captain, single rooms, and then the other 14, 7 rooms for the other 14. And you'd always tell the manager, as best as possible, obviously if you have like 6 people from the same island, it isn't going to always work out. But he always tell the managers, the best as possible, do not have the people from the same island as roommates. We want
mhm,
people to learn each other's culture. We need people to be mixing with each other and understanding each other, know what faults different people have and how to accommodate them. And that is how you build a proper team as well. Everybody has to cooperate with each other. You have some fantastic cricketers and you have some okay cricketers. Not every squad is going to have all fantastic cricketers. And you need to mix and mold. And Clive Lloyd understood that.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, so we can speak about that great team. Of course, we know the fearsome foursome fast bowlers,
All from
etc.
4 different islands as well.
Exactly. Yes, yes. And I believe you roomed with Andy more than anybody else. Yes.
Yes, that is true. That is true.
Okay.
Well, we were friends from so long ago, and from different islands, it wasn't a problem for us to room together.
Right.
Lloyd
Now,
wouldn't have objected to that.
okay. So let's talk about the batsmen for a minute because I think it was a powerful batting lineup. What
Absolutely.
starting with Viv, of course, and Gordon Greenwich. Your impressions of them and what they really brought to the team.
Well, again, you talk about Clive Lloyd being underrated and not getting the highlights that he should. I find similarly with Gordon Greenwich. Not that people didn't rate Gordon Greenwich as a great player. If Vivian Alexander Richards was not in that team, Gordon Greenwich should have gotten a lot more accolades. He was a fantastic player. His first tour to Australia was not successful because people who know about Gordon Greenwich will know that he played most of his cricket up as a young man in England, where the ball didn't bounce very high. Still doesn't at times now.
Mm,
And of course, going to Australia with the ball bouncing on those hard Australian pitches, he struggled a bit with his technique. But after that tour, Gordon Greenwich had a fantastic career. And as I said, if it wasn't for IBA Richards in that team, everybody would be talking about Gordon Greenwich, Gordon Greenwich, Gordon Greenwich. But when you have somebody like Richards in your team, because Viv, in my eyes, el numero uno, and not by a short distance either.
mm,
Everybody focused on Viv. But those two guys were two fantastic players for the West Indies. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day as well, and I was saying to him that I can't remember. It must have happened, obviously, but I cannot remember Gordon Greenwich being out saying the first half an hour of a test match because
mm,
he went out there and did his job. As I said, it must have happened, and people might call in or people might remind us of it happening a few times, but it just didn't strike me as something that happened on a regular basis. He was such a fantastic player, and opening the batting isn't easy against that brand new ball and a fresh pitch, especially in countries where the ball is swinging and seaming. Not an easy job, but he did it well.
Yes. So, you played first class cricket in Australia for Tasmania.
Tasmania, yes.
Yes, and you went over to Lancashire for I think a season or maybe two. I don't remember.
No, it was I didn't really play a full season for Lancashire. What happened with that deal is that, beg your pardon, I was playing Lancashire League cricket in 1981 for Rishton in the Lancashire League. Lloydie, of course, was at Lancashire. And because Lloyd was at Lancashire and, West Indies captain, we still had a close relationship and that sort of thing. I would even go over to his house in Manchester at times because we only played league cricket on the weekends. And he organized with Lancashire for me to play some one-day games in that 1981 season. Never played well, I can't remember playing any 3 or 4 day games for Lancashire in that season. Possibly I did, I don't remember though. And I played some one-day games for Lancashire in that 81 season, but I was never actually on the Lancashire staff. I became a county cricketer through Derbyshire County Cricket Club. And
Right.
that now was in the 80s, much later on.
Okay. And what was that? You had toured England before, etc. But what was that experience like? Actually playing county cricket in England now. What was that experience like?
Well, to be honest, it was quite enjoyable. But that was because by the time I played county cricket, as I said, I played for Derbyshire much later on in life. I was approached by Jeff Miller, who I had played against. He was an England cricketer, off spinner, and I had played against Dusty Miller, and we had become pretty good friends from England West Indies cricket. And he approached me in Australia when I was there. What was I there for? I don't remember, but I was down in Australia when there was an Ashes tour going on. And he approached me. It might have been the same time I was at Tasmania. I don't remember. And he approached me and said that Derbyshire had asked him to approach me if I would be willing to play county cricket in England. And I told Dustin, no, I'm not interested in playing county cricket. But then he came back and said to me that they don't want me to play all the county games. They want me to play all the one-day games and half of the county games, the 3 day games. And I said, well, under those circumstances, I'll think about it. And eventually I did. I went in 1985. 1983 should have been my first year after the World Cup in 83. And
Mhm.
I played a few games for Derbyshire after the World Cup, but I had also injured my ankle in that World Cup final when everybody stormed the field and somebody trampled me on the field at Lords. So I wasn't able to play properly in 83. Then West Indies toured in 84, so I was with the West Indies team. And then my first full season now with Derbyshire was 85, and I played with them for 5 years. And I played all the one-day games and played 12 of the 3 day games. And by the time I got to Derbyshire, John Wright was the other professional there. John Wright, the New Zealand opening batsman. And they had this rule that you could have two overseas cricketers on staff, but only one could play at a time. So I would play most of the home games, or almost all the home games, because Barry, who was our groundsman, he would prepare the pitch because he knew I was playing in the home game. So we
Right.
leave a little bit of grass on the surface. And John Wright would play the away game because, with me and the Derbyshire staff, they weren't going to prepare quick pitches unless, if they knew I was going to play. But they knew John Wright was playing all the away games. So he would play the away games, I would play the home games.
Oh, I see. So, Michael, you retired somewhat suddenly because I remember people like myself, we wondered, were you injured? What happened? Why you retired? I think you were in New Zealand at the time.
Yeah.
And so the retirement, was it a sudden retirement or
Some
no?
people might think that no deal, but I wanted to retire from 1985 when I was 31 years old.
Okay.
And Jackie Hendricks, who was actually the chairman of selectors, I think at the time, came to me at the end of the series in the Caribbean because I had invited my parents down to Antigua to watch me play my last test match, which I thought was my last at any rate.
Mm.
And at the end of the series, Jackie Hendricks came to me and said, "Oh, I hear that you're retiring." I said, "Yes, Mr. Major." 'Cause I call him Major. He was Major for the team at different times as well. I said, "No, I think you need to hang on a bit more. Viv is taking over and Viv is going to need some help with some senior players." He said, "What we'll do, we were supposed to go into Pakistan, I think, later on that year or early next year. I don't remember exactly when." He said, "Listen, we'll leave you out of the Pakistan tour. Refresh yourself, get your mind back into the game, and then we want you to continue playing after the Pakistan tour." And so I did that. And I played another couple of years. when I actually now retired in 1987, it was partially due to a little injury that I had. I had a little back problem. I think I had pulled a muscle in my back. And I couldn't bowl properly in the test match at Wellington, I think it was, and I left the field and Dennis Waite was our physio, and at the time, everybody trusted in Dennis. And I said to Dennis, what's the problem here? And he said, oh, it's a little niggle that you have here in your back. I said, well, will I be able to play the next test match? And he said, no, you're not going to be able to make the next test match, but you'll be okay for the one-day series. And I said there and then, no, I ain't hanging around for a one-day series, Dennis. If I can't play in the test match, I am going home because I didn't intend to play much longer anyway. And Stephen Comarsh was the manager at the time. And I went to Stephen Comarsh and I said to Steve, manage, I think I need to go home and I'm retiring. Dennis said I can't play the next test match and I ain't hanging around for one day cricket. So I think I need to go home. I had to convince him because he was adamant that, I can't retire and that sort of a thing. But eventually he saw the light and he gave me my ticket and I went home.
So, Michael, before, as we come into the close here, we can't speak without mentioning you in the commentary box. How difficult was it for you as a competitor to adjust and transition to the commentary box?
It took a bit of time, Dale. But again, as I said, with my cricketing career, my actual playing days, I had some good people around me that I learned from. And not just learn from them, but they taught me. Because it's so important. You need people around you that can help you. Watching and observing people is always very helpful. But when they actually get involved and speak to you about what you're trying to do, that helps even more. And I had some good people around me. I went to Australia pretty early in my commentary days. And I had people like Richard Beno and the two Chappells and Bill Lawry and Tony Gregg around me. And they helped me a lot. Richard Beno was pretty much the doyen of cricket broadcasting those days. And I remember sitting down beside Richie in the Coach Channel 9 commentary box, doing commentary with Richie, and almost afraid of saying anything. I just sat there with the mic in my hand because I am so intimidated by Richie Beno to my left that I don't even want to say anything to make people think I'm an idiot or something. And Richie, because I don't know if people are familiar with the type of microphones that we use in the commentary box. They call it lip mic, that you have to put them up to your lip to speak because they're not very sensitive in the fact that if you have them down and speak, they won't pick up what you're saying. So you actually have to take the mic to your lip. And Richie removed his mic and turned to me and said, Mikey, if you see something on the field that you want to talk about, it's not actually on the screen, it's not on your monitor, don't be afraid to speak to the director downstairs and tell him what you want. Because there's a button on the box in front here that they call the lazy mic, that you can press like a white button and speak to the director and it doesn't go to ear. And that's what Richie was telling me. And I'm there sitting and I'm thinking, Richie Bello is telling me to tell the director, who is the boss downstairs, what I want. And slowly but surely, it dawned on me that Richie was trying to help me along. And I spent a lot of time with Richie and Ian Chappell in particular. And both those gentlemen helped me a lot with my commentary. They weren't around when I first started because I first started in the Caribbean, of course. But those were fledgling days. I didn't have a clue what was going on. But Richie Beno and Ian Chappell in particular helped me so much when I went to Channel 9.
Okay. So, as an analyst or commentator, what aspects of the game did you enjoy most explaining to viewers?
I didn't enjoy any particular thing more than the other. Obviously, I would know a bit more about bowling than batting. But at the same time, as I've said to so many people, if you are going to be a successful bowler, you have to know about batting as well. Otherwise, you won't know what type of delivery to bowl or where to bowl the ball. But the important thing that I learned again from Richie Beno that helped me with my commentary and helped with my analysis of the game. Richie said to me one day, Mikey, when you speak, do not tell people what they're already seeing. The pictures are there. Don't tell somebody that he just hit a four or he just covered over the ball or he just pulled the ball. They already saw that. Tell them how he did it, why he did it. Explain to people exactly what is going on because people are seeing pictures. So don't tell them, radio is different. In radio, you have to tell people what's going on because they ain't seeing it. But on television, do not tell people what they're already seeing. You've got to go a bit deeper. And that is when I started to think deeply about the game, explaining to people why this particular ball was bowled, why this batsman played that particular shot, how he managed to get the ball from the offside through mid-wicket. You can't just tell me, oh, he hit it through mid-wicket. That's all right. And that is how I learned how to really analyze the game and how to think deeply about the game.
Yes. And we're getting ready to close, but I have to ask you, sir, about the run-up. How did that evolve?
I think my run-up came from my athletics days. I used to do long jump deal. And again, that is what helped me in not bowling no ball as a young man. Because if you know long jump, you have to hit that board properly. Unless it's a no jump or you're jumping from behind the board and you're not getting the full distance of your jump. So I perfected my run-up through long jump. And of course, the rhythm that you had to build from long jump to take off on that board. That helped me as well with my run-up as a cricketer. So that is basically where all that came from.
And your figures, home and away, we have to look at the narrative. Home and away, your figures are very similar. Your bowling average, of course, you took more wickets away because you played more away test matches than you played home matches. But your consistency, regardless of the climate, the pitches, you seem to adjust very well to any condition. What would you attribute that to?
Well, without you telling me this now, Dale, I would have thought I took a lot more wickets and I had a better average away from home than at home. Because the West Indian pitches, Dale, not easy to bowl on. Apart from Sabina Park and Barbados, the rest of the pitches is hard work, especially Guyana, hard work. Antigua, hard work. You have seen how many batsmen have hit world records in Antigua on that flat pitch. So I would have thought that my record away from home would have been far superior, but you say it's pretty equal. So I'll have to take your word for it. But I can't tell you exactly why. I don't know. I can't put my finger and say, well, this is why I took so many wickets at home or that sort of a situation.
Okay. So I'm going to turn you over to Sir Dennis now. But Michael,
Sure.
this has been a tremendous pleasure for me. And listening to you in the commentary box, you carry the Caribbean with you wherever you went, whether you're playing the game or you're commentating. And I remember when I just came to the United States and I heard Michael Manley speak, and I've heard Forbes Burnham speak and others. And in today's, we have Mia Motley, and
Yes.
it's distinctive Caribbean.
Well, I didn't know anything else, dear. And I have never been very good at languages. So I've never been able to talk about copying accents and that sort of thing. I learned to speak the way I speak, and I just spoke that way. I'll give you a quick story before you go. I was in Antigua doing commentary and walking around the outfield behind the stands. And an English gentleman, of course, recognized, because I was at Sky at the time. It wasn't like before I was known on Sky. He came up to me and said, "Oh, Mikey, I enjoy your commentary so much, but when are you going to lose your accent?" I was taken aback, to be honest.
Yes.
Because, I thought this man had some nice thing to say to me or whatever, which, yes, he did, because he said he enjoyed my commentary. But when he said that, I was taken aback a bit, and I just looked at him and I said, "Sir, I'll lose my accent when Jeffrey Boycott loses his." And left it there.
Yeah. So, Michael, there are some players you would just pay to see them do something in particular. Garfield Sobers is one of them, just to see him walk to the wicket.
Colors up.
Colors up and that walk. And Michael Holden running in from his long run up, running into bowl. Those are two sides that it's not beauty that is in the eye of the beholder. This is just pure, unexpurgated beauty.
Thank you very much, Dale. Thank you.
God bless you, sir. And Dennis, over to you.
Brother Dale, thank you so much.